Welcome to this week's episode of Insight. During this week's show, we're going to cover three topics. The first one is going to be the shocking revelations by the Prime Minister that the regime in Baku has started using banned psychotic substances to make Armenian hostages make false confessions. Then we're going to move on to the report, the first annual report of Armenia's Foreign Intelligence Service. And then we will close with some very interesting information about fertility rates by the National Statistical Committee.
Yerevan
has intelligence that Armenian prisoners held in Baku are given banned psychotropic substances in order to provoke statements that will lead to escalation of tension in the region. I do not consider anyone in Baku as my political opponent. Moreover, what is happening is not only a matter of serious concern, but will be used and is being used to provoke a new escalation in the region. We have intelligence information that these people are being exposed to banned psychotropic substances in order to obtain statements and testimony from them, aimed at inciting regional escalation. We are trying to resolve this issue by all available means.
What are we to make of all this? First of all, given how cautious he is in making accusations against the regime in Baku, I'm almost certain what he is outlining is actually the case. Secondly, this is prima facie evidence about the failure of his policy of separating the release of the hostages from the greater so-called peace process. The reality is that he might have conceded separating the two issues, but the regime in Baku simply pocketed that concession and moved forward with weaponizing the hostages against us to carry out more aggressions against Armenia. In analyzing this and looking at ways of moving forward, there's one thing the Prime Minister said that I like, which is when he said that he has no political enemies that are being held hostage in Baku. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but whether it's true or not, it's irrelevant, since the issue, frankly, is tailor-made to start the process of healing our political divide, since no one actually opposes freeing our hostages. It's time to put the hostage release issue as a central point in our foreign policy agenda and use it to unite the much broader Armenian world to build public pressure on the regime to free the hostages. Let's move on to the second topic of the week, which is the threat assessment report released by Armenia's Foreign Intelligence Service. This is actually the first report by our Foreign Intelligence Service, which was actually set up in 2022. It's actually incredible that a country that faces the threat or has faced the threats that we have faced for so many years didn't even have a Foreign Intelligence Service until 2 years ago. Most importantly, this is actually the one branch of our intelligence services that is not compromised by the Russian state operatives. It's actually been established with Western help. There are actually two reports. One is classified that goes to political military leaders, and the other one is the public statements and the public report which we've seen. The one thing that everyone has been talking about is the one part of the report that says that they do not expect a major attack on Armenia by the Baku regime. The rest of the report, frankly, talks about very ordinary things that are nothing unexpected as far as how instability in the region can be a threat to Armenia. Let's try to understand what's relevant here. This public portion of the report is actually a political document. So, and in any political document, what it does not say is more relevant than what it does say. When it says they do not expect a major attack, what they're saying is that they fully expect or are planning that there might be smaller aggressions by the Baku regime. At the end of the day, what this is sort of a snapshot in time of where we're at today, and things can obviously change very quickly. Now we're going to move to the third and final topic of the week, which has to do with the birth rates report that are out. This is by the National Statistical Committee of Armenia, which released the Demographic Handbook of Armenia, in which the details are presented about Armenians' population and fertility rates. In 2023, the fertility rate in Armenia once again rose to 1.885, one of the highest in Europe. In 2013, the fertility rate hit an all-time low of 1.57 and has been slowly and steadily increasing since then for the past 11 years. According to the report, the mean age in which women give birth to a child has also increased from 25.8 in 2013 to 29.0 in 2023. This is always a good sign because it essentially matches in developed countries where women give birth at a later age and not at an age that is way too young and affects everything from childhood development and half a dozen different things. Women in rural communities give birth earlier and their fertility rates are much higher than in urban areas. And this is, again, consistent with what we have seen around the world. Generally, the rule of thumb is the more women get educated, the less children they have. Yerevan actually has the lowest fertility rate in the country, sitting at 1.349, whereas Vayazor has the highest, which is at 2.682. The larger context of this is that birth rates are crashing and declining all over the world, even in our major neighboring countries, except for sub-Saharan Africa. Armenia and Georgia, in many ways, are complete outliers. We're actually the only two countries in Europe that have near replacement level birth rates. But in reality, even these two countries, Armenia and Georgia, are nowhere near replacement level birth rates, which needs to be at 2.1. So essentially you have a general decline in population everywhere, except ours will be less so because of this marginal difference. And demographic programs that have been done by countries around the world, whether it's to pay people to have children, which we actually have some of that here, give a small boost to raising rates, but that usually just changes the time when people have children and doesn't really have much long-term effect. This is obviously a very complex issue, and it's very hard to analyze what's actually driving the increase in birth rates. But if I was to actually put my finger on one thing, it probably has to do with rising incomes, which we've actually seen in both countries over the last 10 years, specifically over the last 4 or 5. There's a tendency in our region for people to have children as soon as they can afford them. In conclusion, there's actually factors that are not quantifiable that are probably driving this change. And if I was to put my finger on it, it will be the sort of the non-developed world cultural patterns we have in this country and in our region, in which children and families are still the center of social life. In fact, children in this part of the world are all little gods that are taken care of by extended families, which is one of the great charms of living in our region. Thank you for joining me in this week's Sort of Insights.
Picture a little love nest down